What is going on, everybody? Mark Arrow Jr., 21st Century Distributing. Welcome to a special edition of the TwoOne. We're excited to have George Daggett here with Island Router, and we're going to go over the importance of the router in your system, specifically the new Pro router that George is going to get into. So we're going to get into this. We're going to ask a couple questions from you, our special audience members. Fun fact about George, his favorite movie is Shawshank Redemption. And I see that you're wearing a suit. Now, was this the suit that Andy Dufresne was wearing when he was leaving?
No, it's not. Everything has a story. And I was in your part of the world a couple of weeks ago meeting with an integrator. And I was telling my story that I was an integrator for decades. I was an integrator. And he just shook his head. He says, "You don't dress like an integrator." So nice little compliment. I just like to look sharp when I can. Nothing more.
So you've been an integrator, so you know everything that our integrators have to go through, especially with the network, because the network is the backbone of any system. So,
Indeed.
And it's funny when you go onto your website. Like the first thing that comes up is let me pull this up real quick. It is your clients have a home mesh Wi-Fi and a premium ISP plan. The next step is Island, and I guess the number one question that's out there, and you'll probably get into, is why or how does a customer would have an Island router, or why should they be using an Island router over a free ISP router, even a router from a reputable network manufacturer? And I think these are maybe one of the two questions that we're going to have answered here today.
We do hear that question all the time, and we have, I think, pretty good answers. You know, there's just a lot of a product out there that's clamoring for attention, and you can go up and down the food chain, and you can spend as little or as much as you like on a router. The thing that we find interesting is that unlike other things that we use and touch every day, the router is just kind of buried. It's just kind of in the background, whether it be a home or a business, and they're just kind of good enough, and they kind of do the job. And
out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind. That's a big part of this situation. But I'm going to use as many analogies as I can today. My job, this is not a commercial as much as it is information. And what is really going on out there in the world today? What do we really have on the shelf when we talk about routers in particular? And the short story is we have been building and inventing things for 40 years. PerfTech. I came performance technology. I came on the scene a little bit more than 30 years ago. And so the short story is routers are what we do. We don't have a long list of products. We have routers, and we have routers only. Matter of fact, Island is brand new from a 40-year company. And just about 3-4 years ago, we had exactly one product in our company, our $1 million router. And we'll talk about a little bit that in a moment. But at the end of the day, the analogy that I've always liked to use is the old commercial. I think it was Tide detergent, and they showed a white sock. They held it up in front of the camera, and everybody agreed there's a white sock. And then they held up a sock that was actually very bright white. And oh my gosh, the contrast, the difference, you don't realize it. And so what we're saying here is you don't realize the importance and the significance of how ordinary and how old modern, not modern, but new routers are. I want to use my words carefully. Island is a modern router, and we're going to take a few minutes to unpack that. So 20 plus years ago, we had our $1 million router, and we looked out on the landscape and we saw that there was just a gap, a gulf between the kind of routers that you and I buy at a box store, at a retail store, online, and then there are the big boy routers that take a PhD to install, and you have to write a really big check, and they're virtually impossible for the average person to use. And so where Island, where we think is our sweet spot, is we have the performance of a carrier grade product, a real no kidding carrier grade router. We have that performance, but we've been making hard things simple from the beginning. That's a very big part of my personal journey and my story with this company for more than 30 years. I was not highly technical, and I learned one of their first products in the late 80s, and I couldn't believe how I was able to get things done without being super technical. Once again, We take very difficult things and we make them very easy. And that is absolutely the one of the principles of one of our values that we stand by. So 20 plus years ago, we had the one router, and now we have two additional routers. The original Island, you can see here, it's the 4-port. We call it the 1 gig unit. And then the market asked for more. We wanted more bandwidth. We wanted a rack mount. So we are always listening to what the market asks for. We're not manufacturer driven. We're market driven. What are the people asking for? What is the market asking for? And let's give it to them. So that's what we have here with the Island Pro. I'll go to the next slide. We all know that nature abhors a vacuum. Internet speeds have increased, and then we figured more and more things to put on the wire. Video was a big deal when you had websites with video, and now it's 4K, and it's just endless. And what we're expecting to see, it's here sort of, but it's really coming, and that's the Internet of Things and this AI business. So Wi-Fi continues to increase in speed. Devices, we keep adding devices to our home and business networks, and yet the router has really been left behind. And that's where Island just really shines as far as what does a router really do, and what does it bring, what problems does it solve, and what joy does it bring to the user. Island, the name Island is very, very important for us to communicate. We want to communicate. Of course, we have marketing concerns. Of course, we have business concerns. But more importantly, what are we trying to say with the name Island? And what we are saying and what we are trying to communicate is the contrast between all of the routers of today that want to protect you from the big, bad internet. They're ferocious. They have fierce icons. They have swords and shields to protect you from this big, bad internet, which is not an error in thought. But where Island comes in is just relax. We've got you covered. We do things that other routers don't do. Of course, some routers do things we do not. But at the end of the day, Island Router is designed for you to be able to be at peace, to relax, and now enjoy all of the things that networking brings to business, to families, individuals, and having a router that it's not the same as set and forget. It's just having a router that is designed and built to accomplish things that other routers, quite simply, they just don't take the trouble to design. And that's one of the things that makes us really, really different. This is probably my favorite slide because I was such a big part of it for all of these years. There are a lot of think tanks in the world. We think of MIT, we think of Silicon Valley, we think of Palo Alto, we think of Xerox Labs, we think of all of these things, and they're not the only ones in town. San Antonio, Texas, arguably had the first email ever sent, and there's some real technology companies in San Antonio, my hometown, incidentally. And so this is my favorite slide, just as, who are these guys? We hear that question all the time. We don't have the name recognition of, let's say, a Netgear or an Eero or some of the other popular ones. But let me tell you, we've been doing some really wonderful things for decades. We were part of the first team that developed the first CPU. We pawned it off to a little company called Intel, and that part of it is history. Networking is interesting. In the 70s, we developed, and I say we, John Murphy, 2 doors down from my boss, he invented ARCnet. He was the father of ARCnet. And ARCnet was the first commercially successful networking technology. There were others, but they weren't commercially successful. And we're not going to dwell on the history too much here, but it's important for us to understand what made ARCnet so special. The other competitors, it's a long list. IBM was there, DEC was there, lots of players, even Apple was there, but they all had what I call a siege mentality. This works with this, and this works with that, and we were kind of forced to choose. And where ARCnet really shined is that it worked with everything. It worked with everybody, and it was really, really a treat. I sold quite a bit of it back in those days. And then in the 80s, things really changed with networking. And all of a sudden, you had a PC in the home and computers in the office, and networking became a really big thing, but you had to pay for it. It didn't come with Windows like it does today. And we had some beautiful networking products. It's a long list. I was there during those days. I did some amazing things in the marketplace with their products that were just superior, and we rode that wave for quite some time, all through the 80s. And then one of the things that is interesting about the folks at the company is they've always been visionaries, being able to look ahead as to what's coming. Instead of being reactionary, let's actually respond to what we think is happening. And sure enough, when the internet became a thing, we had the very first branch router. You'll see it right here in the lower left-hand corner. And not to go too dark down the detailed track, but you just have to remember what things were like in those days. You had 3 or 4 boxes, 3 or 4 appliances. The router was the router. The communication box was the communication box. The firewall was the firewall. And it was just a big mess. And we actually said, hey, like we've always been doing, let's put everything in one box. And that was instant internet. And that was the first branch router where you could show up and unbox, put it on the network, plug it in, and now the entire company is on the internet. That was radical. And we did very, very well. We were purchased by Bay Networks. Then we were once again purchased by Nortel Networks, all because of this little magic box. And it was really, really special. I sold quite a bit of it. And then, as you know, routers have become, sadly, they've become a commodity. You and I can buy a router today for far less than $100. You can plug it in and you can connect your home or business to the network. You can. But boy, what a sad thing it has occurred, where they had just become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and more plastic and watered down parts. This router was $4,400 in the day, and now we buy routers for $44. When we saw that happening, we once again needed to pivot. Folks are not going to pay thousands of dollars for a router like they did early on. And so we pivoted to our browser, our bulletin system. This is in the lower right-hand corner. And this is an interesting story because the carriers came to us. They had a significant problem. Can you imagine managing a network with 10 and 20 and 50 million subscribers? That's a really large headache. So they came to us. They had a particular problem. We thought we could solve it, and of course we did. And so from the year 2000 until today, until just recently rather, we had our $1 million router. And the thing that is so important about this router is that the core technology of this multi-million subscribers, the core technology has been distilled and put into the Island router. It's the same code that runs a network with 50 million users. Very, very efficient.
So George, you then, just to summarize, it was Island's quote unquote technology that was in kind of some of the first out there on network side, first microprocessor gateway.
Oh gosh, yeah. We actually go back. If you look, we have more than 50 patents.
Right.
If that answers your question, every router. Again, we can talk about this as much as you like. Every router, I'm saying almost every router that you and I buy today, if you look under the hood just a little bit, you will see our technology, our patents.
So when you say Island is new, I mean you've been doing this for what you said 40 years, even though the Island
30 plus. I've been selling their products for more than 30 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the Island router is derived from our $1 million router. It's the same code, the same software that runs these millions and millions and millions of packets, and that's the exact same code that runs in the Island. And that's one of the reasons that we're able to say that we're 20 and 50 times faster, not 20% faster, 20 times faster, 50 times faster, and we'll unpack that a little bit. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So performance. It really matters. Just as a little rabbit trail, we talk about performance being speed and, of course, being able to do things quickly. But there are other metrics in terms of performance, like storage. How much history can I keep on my unit? And what about, here's a good one. How about when you have to reboot your router? The Island does not have to be rebooted. That's a whole nother story. But on a normal router that has to be rebooted, and even if you do reboot the Island router, the average router takes about 5 minutes to come back up. And that's a very long time to be dark. If I was a bad guy, I would love to have 5 minutes of shade. Or, oh, I've got to reboot it twice, 10 minutes of shade. I would love to have those 10 minutes to do bad things with no cameras going. And so with Island, just as an example, it reboots in about 45 seconds. So performance is not just about how fast we are, and we are fast. It's not just about how much can we store. How about 2 or 3 years of history on the device? And then, of course, being able to really have it not needed rebooting. We had a whole email campaign a few months ago for the days of rebooting are over. And that's really significant. Everybody knows what to do. You come to work Monday morning, can't get online, reboot the router. Not with Island. Another one of our pillars is security. Security is very important. It's a big topic. You can spend all day long. You can go on YouTube and read and study. And how does everybody do it? Everybody reads the paper. Everyone knows someone that's been affected by a hack or a breach or a ransomware. It's a real big deal. And so we take security, we always have, take it very, very seriously. And we do things just a little bit differently. Most routers don't do much out of the box. Not really. You take them out of the box. They have a yellow internet port. You plug in. You have your other ports for your other things. You plug it in and you attach to the internet, and then you start doing things. Whereas Island, out of the box, you plug it into your network, you attach to the internet, and we're already protecting you from all kinds of threats right out of the box. Our URL filtering is, we can talk about that as little or as much as you like. It's very, very interesting how the bad guys, the bad actors as we call them, most of them, many of them are actually known. How does a spam appliance, a spam filter work? How does it know? Because we have a database, we maintain all the bad actors. It's cat and mouse. The list is updated in real time all the time. But for URLs, web addresses that are bad stuff, we're very much aware of them. And Island has that URL filtering. It's built right in. Another thing that is kind of dovetailing to this whole story is the things that we've done by design, the things that we've done intentionally. Nothing, almost nothing is on the cloud. Everything that Island does, it does locally on the box. We have so much exceedingly good hardware. We'll talk about that in a moment. Our software is so tightly ingrained with the hardware that we're able to do things that other folks simply can't do. So right out of the box, you're protected. Simplicity, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and it can't be stated any other way and other than to say that it's one of our values. And a value is not negotiable, not at our company. It's not negotiable. We spend a lot of time deciding what to leave out versus what to put in. You can look at another router on your right or your left, and they have so many features, and the tabs and the fields and the entries. It's mind-boggling. They're there for a reason, but we've taken a different approach. We have taken the hard, heavy lifting, and we put it under the hood where it should be. And the engineers have designed everything to happen pretty much automatically. And we'll show you exactly what we're referring to. So our performance, I'm going to say no one can touch us, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Security, of course, is important, and we address it head on. Simplicity, it's part of my story as an integrator was I didn't have a ton of formal training. I didn't have hardly any at all. And yet I could go out into the marketplace with their products under my arm, and I was not just swimming with the sharks, but I was showing them how it was done. Not because I glow in the dark, I was nothing special, but their stuff was. And being able to mitigate all of the complicated stuff that goes on with a router and with a network, we've done a very good job of making that simple. And if I were to add one more reason, we treat you like a customer. We really do. Our support is US based, hard to beat. And we have no, you'll see it in another slide, we have no licensing fees. You pay money for an island router, and everything that it does, it does. Everything that it will do, you'll be entitled to with updates, what have you. And we just treat you like a customer. It's we're not the only ones that do, but we do that well. Performance, performance, performance. Once again, you thought the sock was white, you hold it up, and now you see what a really white sock is all about. We have a couple of things several things that really set us apart in terms of our performance. One of the things is, of course, our software. It's super efficient. 5,000 devices on an island. Go to Best Buy. I'm not bashing Ebro. They're a great product, but you look from left to right at their products. This one does 75 devices. Ooh, if I spend a couple of $100 more, this router will handle 150 devices. Well, certainly that's the one I want for my home. And here we are at 5,000 devices for the original 1 gig island. And the Island Pro can handle 10,000 devices. And when we say what it can handle it, what we're saying is you can have 5 or 10,000 devices online, all operating concurrently at the same time, and you just can't slow it down. Hardware is also a very big part of the story. We did not skimp on any of the hardware in our 1 gig island, nor in our rack mount. And when you take anybody with a checkbook can buy a fast processor. Anybody with a checkbook can buy a ton of RAM and a big hard drive or storage. Anybody with money can acquire hardware. But what do we do with it? What can we really do with it? And one of the things that makes us so special is the fact that our hardware and our software are deep down in the belly of Island. I don't like to say belly. I don't want to personify the product, but at its very root, the hardware and the software are so intertwined that we can do things that other folks simply cannot do. They haven't attempted to do it. The analogy that I like to use, when I was a boy, I played a lot of pinball, and everybody knows what a pinball machine is. And I used to fantasize, I used to daydream of what it would be like if I could just take the glass off. And then I could touch that one bumper for the extra ball, or I could touch that one thing for the extra points. If I could just play with the glass off, imagine my score. And that's kind of like what we have done with Island. And it's different from other routers because of the code. And let me say it simply. Open source code. You don't pay for it. You download it. Linux, OpenWRT, there's all kinds of things that you can just download for free off the internet. And these other companies, they're not foolish. Why would I want to develop something when I can just download it? And so the router's on my left, the router's on my right, deep under the hood, you look under there, and it's open source. It's Linux from years and years ago. Linux is not a bad thing, but it's all things to all people. And our code is absolutely dedicated and focused on routing. And we can do things under the hood that other folk can't do. For example, our VPN technology, 1,000 tunnels concurrently. QoS, I have to take a moment since we're talking about performance and talk about QoS, quality of service. It's very easy to understand. It's very easy to sell. I'm on a phone call over voice over IP. Everybody knows what Wi-Fi calling is. And if I get this kind of thing going on, it's horrible. I can't complete the call. I can't understand you. It's choppy. Everybody knows what those headaches are. And so what the market has done over the years is they have given us this thing called QoS, quality of service. And what it really boils down to is I get in there with my little keyboard and my mouse, and I say, you, Mr. Phone Call, you get top priority, and you, Mr. Printer, you don't, and this computer here, and basically we tag and we identify the most important things on the network, like phone calls, and we will make sure that the router pays attention to those first. And that way you have a much better experience with a phone call and you don't get any of this business. Well, that's fine and that's dandy, but what are we saying? What we're saying is I can't deal with all this traffic at once. And so we have to come up with this mechanism to where you take a turn because we don't care about your email. We'll read it later, but this phone call is so important. And where Island excels, when people ask us, how do we do QoS? Do you have a smart queue like this competitor? Do you have everybody has their own little clever nickname for it? And no, we don't fool with QoS. There's never anything in the queue. There is never a packet waiting to be dealt with. They're all created equal. They're all dealt with in near real time. And we don't even fool with QoS. You can't say that about other routers. It's really, really distinctive. Packets are important. We're not going to get into a bunch of bits and bytes like I promised, but every web page that you see, every email that comes in, every streaming, everything that comes over the wire into your hand or into your desktop, whatever happened, all those are packets. They're little bitty elements, and you glue them all together, and there's your page, there's your song, there's your movie. And those packets have to be dealt with individually. And there are millions of them that come across the wire. And where we have really excelled, once again, is with our packet engine. No other router has our proprietary engine. No other router can process the number of packets that we can process within our budget. You can spend, big bucks and get a different story. But our original Island router has 2 million packets per second, and the Island Pro supports 14 million packets per second. What does that mean? That means when you're watching a video and you want to slide the bar ahead for 20 seconds or 20 minutes, it's there. It's instantaneous. Same thing for any kind of video, anything that happens, it just happens instantaneously. And those are packets per second, and that's really important. There's another little detail. I promised I wouldn't get bitsy and bitesy, but this is so important because when we talk about modernity, we're talking about what's modern, what's happening today versus what's happening way back when. And one of the things that has changed over the years if we're just talking about the internet, is we're talking about how web pages have changed. It wasn't that long ago, I went to, let's say, Toyota.com, and I got a web page within the four corners of my screen. It might have had animation, it might have been cute, it doesn't matter. It was a web page, and it filled my screen. It came from a web server. Today, same thing. I can go to Toyota.com, I can go to weather.com, I can go to what have you, and now, instead of a web page coming onto my screen, now I have all of these elements that fill up my screen. They might not even come from the same vendor. It might come from a different company. It might come from 10 companies. It doesn't matter. All of these elements that come in and fill my screen, those are called connections. And it's really fundamental to understand how important connections are with today's internet and today's router that's under the hood. It's 10 and 15 and 20 years old. And here's the short story. I go to Toyota.com or I go to weather.com, and all these elements come in on an average router, not Island. On an average router, those elements are dealt with and processed in single file, one at a time. Call it serial, if you want to use a technical term. And where Island, because we can, because we have the brains, because we have the access, because our hands are not tied, and because we're really smart, we're able to take all of those elements and we deal with them and we take them in parallel. And you want to talk about screens popping, especially when you start scaling 2 users, 20 users, 200 users, it really becomes important. So our performance, we talk about it a lot. The name of the company will never change, Performance Technology. Here's another good one. This is where folks really fail to understand the getting power to the ground. I'm not a big motorsports guy, but I understand that I have 500 horsepower engine, but by the time it goes through the transmission and the gearbox, by the time I get to the ground, I've lost a few horsepower. That's the laws of thermodynamics. Nothing is 100% efficient. But the problem with the internet of today is I have this big hose, let's call it a 2.5 gig, multi-gig. I have this big pipe coming into my home or my business, but my router can't deal with it all because it can't. And so here I have a 2.5 gig service and I'm only getting a fraction of that, or I'm not getting the whole bit. And where Island really excels is everything that it does is at wire speed, meaning whatever you're provisioned, if you're provisioned for 500 megabits, that's what you will yield. 1 gig provisioned, almost 1 gig yield. Same thing with 2.5 gigabits. And these other routers of today, it's capable of receiving 2.5 gigabits, but it is not capable of routing 2.5 gigabits. And that's the big difference.
And George,
Any
are
questions?
a lot of the ISPs out there, I mean, are they, when they sell you on a gig plan sort of service, are they providing you with a router that can't handle that throughput? I mean,
Well,
it seems like that's
it's very interesting. What it really boils down to is, you and I, once again, we don't ask, we don't want, we say, we call Spectrum, we might do some shopping, we'll see who's the cheaper, we'll see who has whatever, and then they show up with the truck or they send the kit and we plug it in and we're happy. The routers that the ISPs use, they're just good enough. They're just kind of sort of good enough, and it's very hard to convince somebody that you can yield your full internet with a router that's capable of processing it. It all comes down to processing, and the average router that comes from your ISP, they're just good enough. They're plastic. They're underpowered, and it just takes a little bit of contrast to reveal that.
so if you have the
But
best APs out there, the best switch, it really wouldn't matter unless you have a router that can handle it, right? I mean,
that's also true. Here's we can talk about Wi-Fi for just a moment, and here's a very interesting reality. Actually, today's Wi-Fi and even yesterday's Wi-Fi, they actually are very good radios. They do this. They do this very well. As long as you don't have a lot of concrete, as long as you don't have the walls and all that kind of stuff. But as far as radios, all the radios today, the access points, the APs, they work just fine. The problem and the challenge with Wi-Fi today is that the APs can only transmit what they receive. What comes in goes out. And again, I have a modern Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, even again, it doesn't matter what the radio is doing if it can only be fed so much. And one of the things that we've said, and it was in one of our email campaigns, I don't want to just be clever for the sake of being clever. I want to say clever things if they communicate. And one of the clever things that we have been saying for some time is let Island unburden your Wi-Fi. Let the radios do the radioing and let us do the work, the real work. And let us feed you that 2.5 gig, that 1 gig, whatever that connection is. Let us feed that to you without the degradation that the other routers have. And we're seeing folks bundling Island router with XYZ access points, Island router, XYZ access points. And it's a marriage made in heaven because the work is performed by the workhorse. And think of it like cooking a pizza and then delivering the pizza. You can cook a pizza at microwave speed and then deliver it by foot. Or you can have a slow oven and deliver it with a Ferrari. How about a really fast oven and a really fast Ferrari to cook and deliver the pizza? And that's what we do. We like to divide and conquer and separate. Let the cooks do the cooking. Security, we've talked about it a lot. There's much to be said. Our approach to making security simple is you can't see it from here. Yeah, you can. Here we go, over here in the right-hand corner, where you see it says protected. And if you can use your imagination, it's a pretty good little graphic. It's an umbrella. And we're not trying to be cute. It goes back to our theme of making things simple. And the way that we have developed our interface is we use what are called umbrellas. Out of the box, you have one umbrella for protection, and it's a long list of things that it protects you from. If you want to add a second umbrella, these are pre-configured rules, let's call them, you tap, and now you have a second umbrella. and that's helpful. And this protects you from these other kinds of things, and you can get in there and pick and choose and split hairs. And then if you really want to go cuckoo, there's the third umbrella, and you tap on that and you click on it, and now we're really, really choked down. And we can look at all of these rules, gambling, drugs, pornography, self-injury, cutting, all kinds of things that's just out there on the wild. And with a tap and a swipe, you can prevent all of that from coming into your network. So our security is really important. We already know that it doesn't matter how good our burglar bars are. I can have the biggest fortress in the world, and if my doorbell rings and I look through the peephole and I see a sharp individual smiling, I'm going to open the door. And we have learned over the years that, yeah, you have folks that do the brute force, you have virus attacks, you have all these kinds of things, but it's usually the guy out on his smoke break that's doing something he shouldn't be doing on his instrument that brings in the trouble. And we've done a very, very good job of mitigating that. You can see down here, botnets, hacking, keyloggers, all kinds of stuff that we protect you from right out of the box. We talked about simplicity. Boy, oh boy, here's a good one for you. We have this technology called Smart Swap, patent pending. Right now it's registered or trademarked, or it's a service mark, but it's patent pending. We're not aware of anyone else that's even attempting, much less has executed what we are calling Smart Swap. And it's a simple story. It's easy to understand. Remember, as an integrator, if you ask me to come build you a network, I can do that, and I'll just do whatever I want, and I'll pick out whatever schemes, whatever color cables I want to use. Fine, here's your network. Let me take good care of you. But what do we do when we get the phone call? Hey, I need you to take over my network, and I need you to replace my router. Okay, so where's the documentation? Don't have any. Can I talk to your administrator of the network? He won the lottery, he's gone. So now, Mr. Integrator, I have to go to the customer or the home, and I have to do discovery. Some people call it recon, same thing. I've got to find out what we've got here, and what are we doing? What are our printers doing? What is our cameras doing? What do we have here on this complicated network? Well, believe it or not, even though it's complicated, it's all very linear. It's all just black and white stuff. So what we have done is we have developed this Smart Swap technology where you plug the island into an existing network and you give it just a couple of short minutes. It's really, really fast. And what we do is we map and we fingerprint all of your devices. We start with devices. So if you have 100 printers, now Island shows you have 100 printers. If you have 200 computers, there they are in the list. You have phones, it doesn't matter. Whatever your devices are, Island will bring them in. A little bit technical, I apologize, but even if you have VLANs, virtual LANs, which is a very technical way of separating things and keeping things from seeing each other, even if you have VLANs on your network that are pre-configured, we can deal with that. We can inhale them. We can bring them right into Island's database. And so the short story is you plug in your Island, it learns the devices, you retire the existing router. If your access points were part of the router before, you put them in bridge mode. It's simple, tap and a swipe on almost any router. And then the next thing you do is you completely retire your existing router, the one that you started with, and now you have the Island router, and all of your devices on your network, and I'm saying all of your devices on your network, they're right there within the four corners of your screen or within your handheld instrument, and now you've got all your devices. Their IP addresses, it learned them. MAC addresses, very technical, it learns them. If they have an operating system that is advertised, oh, this is Windows, oh, this is Linux, we ascertain that. If they have a host name, if my printer's name is P1 and P2, well, then when I go into Island, there's P1 and there's P2. It brings everything in. There is a short list of things that cannot bring in. We can talk about it. We can't do static routes. No one can ascertain a static route on your network. You put it back. We cannot ascertain port forwards, but they're easy to tap and swipe. And we cannot ascertain a static IP address, but it's easy to set up. So the Smart Swap is really, really a special feature. I have integrators that are putting 2 a day. They're installing 2 islands a day. And that's pretty significant. And the Smart Swap is a big part of that. I don't want to gloss over our structure. You can call it a database. And here's where Island really, really shines. Once Island is configured and once you're kind of set up, we don't really care about IP addresses. I know that sounds sacrilegious. And of course, IP is there, but we don't have to fool with it at that level. And what our database, our hierarchy, it's devices and users and groups. Devices, cameras, laptops, phones, music sources, everybody knows what a device is. Now, users are the individuals on your network, whether it be in the sales department, engineering department, kids upstairs, doesn't matter. Users are the human beings that participate on the network. They're not the users that go in and administer the router. That's different. These are just users, human beings that are on your network, participating and using the internet. And then we also have a classification called groups. And this is where the real magic is. Groups can be configured to be a group of devices. All my Rokus. I've got a group called Rokus. I have 4 or 5 Rokus. I have a group called cameras. All my cameras in a group called cameras. I have a group called printers. All my printers in a group called, so that's one way to group devices. But you can also group users, sales, marketing, kids, guests, vendors, on and on and on. And so when you take your regular router, my router on the left, it knows that I have devices, but that's all it knows. It doesn't know that I have 4 kids and a vendor. It doesn't know that I have an accounting department. This router doesn't know that I have a sales department. This router doesn't know that I have a shipping department, but Island does. It's easy to set up. And then once you have your devices and your users and groups set up, and it does take a little bit of work, it's easy, borderline fun. So once you put all that in, then the next thing, when you want to administer your network, you do it the same way the big boys do. When they have their Windows networks and they go to the domain controllers and they manage it by what have you. So for example, if grandma's coming over and I don't want any of the kids to be on their screens, guess what? With one tap and one swipe, all of the screens that belong to my kids, remember their user, their group, all their devices are now paused. No screens. Grandma leaves, it was a nice visit. I tap it again, and now I'm back in the game. That's one example of what you can do with our hierarchy. It's endless and it's beautiful, and your network and Island, they overlap. And the way that your network is structured and the way that the humans are existing in your organization, Island allows you to track all that, and it allows you to configure it all in such a way that I can just breeze my way through it. It's a treat. Pricing is very important. We make no mistake. We make no surprises. We have no secrets. The original router, our 1 gig router, is $499 retail MSRP. Once again, no subscription fees. And our
It's
Island
also
Pro,
good to note that price changed last year. I think it was
we're
more than
going to talk about
last
that.
year.
Yeah,
So
we
you're
are.
getting a lot more for obviously a fraction of the cost, which is
Yeah, when
you know,
we came to market, this was our original product, our Island router, and we came to market, and we had a lot of folks that jumped high and they loved it, and we had a lot of folks that didn't. We heard 3 things from the market. I need a multi-gig. Okay, and there are reasons we can talk about that. I need a rack mount,
rack mount. Yeah.
and I can't get into these places at $12.99. I can't, some places I can get into at $12.99, but these folks aren't going to pay $12.99 for a router when they know they can pay $2.99 for one. So we sat by the side of the brook, we contemplated, we met hard, and we decided, okay, here's what we're going to do. So the market asked for multi-gig. How about 6 ports at 2.5 gig and 4 ports at 10 gigabit over fiber? There's your multi-gig. I need a rack mount. Well, there you have it. Beautiful, sleek, 1U. And what about the price? Well, we dropped the price of Island 1 gig to $499, and now the Pro is $12.99. And when you look at what we bring to the table with those dollars, it almost becomes, well, what we're seeing, and we're seeing that it sells itself.
There's the pro.
Yeah, I mean it's beautiful. And one of the things that, again, I hate to be clever just for the sake of being clever, but it's when you look out at the world and you see how did that happen? How did it take so long? I use the example wheels on a suitcase. I'm not an old man. I'm not a teenager, but yet in my lifetime, we went from not having wheels on a suitcase to now all suit. Why did it take 4,000 years to figure that out? I don't know, but there you have it. And one of the things that makes Island just so remarkable is how we have seen and we think so differently. We think we outthink. You hear outrunning and outperforming, and we outthink. And the pro here is just I can't really I don't want to start talking in circles, but as far as the performance and what it brings to your organization is just phenomenal, because once again we've taken the trouble to design it in such a way that the headaches that you and I accept, we reboot the router on Monday morning and we don't even think about it. It has become normal. No, that's not normal. Having subscription fees that are driving everybody crazy, big problem. And so we just mitigated all of the obstacles, and we call it low friction. It's a very easy product to understand. It's very easy to use. It's very easy to sell. It's very easy to maintain, and there's just nothing else, quite like it. Um, Again, you have to look at the average router, and you just look under the hood a little bit. The folks at the office seem to get a kick out of this little analogy that I've used before, and it's actually real. What would you think in real life? What would you think if you got on a modern airplane to fly to a faraway city and the armrest had ashtrays in all of the armrests? Or what would you think if you went to your bank and all the teller stations had ashtrays? You wait a minute, that's 25, that's not modern. And guess what? All you have to do is look under the hood a little bit at the routers on your left, the routers on your right. And when you look under the hood just a little bit, you're going to see ashtrays, and you're going to see technology that is so outdated, like the transactions, like processing those things in image file, polling. Let me just say one little teeny tiny thing. This is really important. How are we able to do? Okay, so I've got a big processor and I got my code. Okay, so just because I have the glass off the pinball, what does that mean? Well, it means that we can do things that really result in performance. As an example, a little bit technical. Most IT, everything is interrupt driven. When I press the space on my keyboard, hey, give me a space bar. And same thing when I press any letter or any key. Hey, and it's called an interrupt. It's actually an interrupt request. Pay attention to me. Well, with routers, you've got guys pounding on the keyboard. Hey, give me this website. Hey, give me this email. Do this thing for me. And that's fine and that's dandy. But the overhead associated with that is not insignificant. And where we're different is, instead of, look at these ports, instead of you saying, hey, pay attention to me, I'm on port 1. Hey, pay attention, I'm on port 3. Instead of that, what our engineers have done and what they've developed, it's borderline magic. We poll the ports. You can think of it like scanning, but technically it's polling. So instead of, hey, pay attention, it's like, got anything? Got anything? Got anything? Got anything? We are proactively, we're not reacting to your request. There are no interrupts. We are making sure that if there's anything that needs service, we're right there. No one else is doing that because they can't. We've gotten very good press. Once again, uh, who a lot of things depend on who you ask. Channel Pro is very respected. Some folks, Matt Whitlock is their author here. They're just jumping up and down. We've gotten very good press, lots of awards, so much to be said about having a modern product. I mean, here's the thing: when was the last? And I'm not asking you to answer, Mark. I'm asking the audience. When was the last time you saw something really, really new and really, really different, whether it be a router or not? I go back to the iPhone and what a game changer the iPhone was. And sure enough, shortly thereafter, everybody followed. And it was new and it was exciting and it had not been seen before. And routers have been around forever. Every home and every business has a router. And yet, there's nothing new and there's nothing exciting about them because there's nothing new and there's nothing exciting. There's no interesting story. They don't have any interesting history. They don't have any interesting hardware. They don't have interesting software. They're just good enough. They stack them deep. They sell them cheap. You get support if you're lucky, and have a nice day. And Island is just so completely different from just about everything out there. I wanted to not do all the talking. If you have a question or two.
Yeah, no, George, thank you so much. From Island Router on an island. I think there was a reason for that. So really appreciate you. Yes, we have a couple of questions here. Since this is the 2-1, we have a couple of questions from our. And by the way, the analogies were great. I wrote down a couple. I think the pizza analogy one might be my favorite. So the pizza analogy and then the ashtray are probably my two favorites. So great job connecting, because I know that, like you were mentioning, I mean, this is stuff you just put in the rack, you forget about it, but just knowing kind of what's inside and why it's so important to have a router of this caliber for our customers, clients is vital. So let me get through these couple questions and we'll close up. One of them, it looks like you had already asked or answered. This is from a Tim Robbins. How many packets per second can the Island Pro handle? I think you went over that earlier, right?
Yeah, the Island Pro, 14 million packets per second. And what's interesting about that, it used to be 13. It used to be 13 million packet, but once again, because our engineers are relentless and because they have that access and because they don't ever quit, we went from 13 to 14 million packets per second quite recently. That's the Pro. The 1 gig Island router.
2 million on the Island, right?
The original Island, the 1 gig is 2 million packets per second, whereas the Pro is 14 million packets per second. It's hard to fathom.
Yeah. The second one from a Red Redding. On average, how long does it take to swap out a complex existing router for an Island, including recreating the VLANs? Which is a good question that I don't think we've addressed yet.
No, we talked about
simplicity was one of the three things, so I would think that it wouldn't take long at all.
No, we have integrators that are putting in 2 a day. So to answer your caller's question, I'm going to use a chunky number. I'm going to say about 15 minutes. You have to do it right. Let me give you, you've encouraged me with my analogies. One last one. This is about smart swap. It's really important. I got a recipe from a famous chef because he had the best ice cream in town. He says you got to cook the milk almost boiling, and then you add the eggs. But remember, George, if you add the eggs to the boiling milk, you're going to get scrambled eggs. You've got to add the boiling milk to the eggs and slowly work it in for your mixture. And of course, me, don't tell me how to live my life. Well, guess what? You take that hot boiling milk and you put your eggs in it, you do get scrambled eggs. So with Island, with Smart Swap, there is a sequence. You don't have to have your head in a vice. You don't have to step and walk on eggs, but there's a sequence. And if your integrators follow the sequence, plug it in, let it learn, retire the existing router, put your APs in bridge mode, move the WAN. If you follow the sequence, it's just unbelievable. And so to answer your question, if you're organized, 15 minutes, you can have a new Island router installed with all of your devices, all of your VLANs, everything working. Just the little short list I mentioned. You might have to publish your camera, your DVR might have to have a port forward, etc. But at the end of the day, 15 minutes and you should be
They're up
ready,
and running.
ready to roll.
Thanks for that, Red. And so we're going to close out here. Thank you so much, George. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. I'd like to end the 2-1 with just one comment from you. If we have a dealer that has never experienced Router before, by the way, Island Router before, by the way, we have both versions in all 7 locations of 21st Century Distributing. So get with your rep, go online and check them out. But if you were to give us just one comment of why one of our customers should try Island for the first time, what do you think that would be?
Well, the one reason is because I would have to say that it's kind of like the quarter pounder. We have all become so cynical.
Another analogy.
Quarter pounder, that's before cooking. What do I care what it is before cooking? What do I get for my dollars? I don't get a quarter pounder. And so the one thing that makes Island so special is all the things that we claim and all the things that we say we do, we really do them. And I get calls not once a day, but once a week. I get these phone calls. I can't believe it. All my VLANs are just there. I can't believe it. My network speed went from 750 to 950. Yes. So the one thing that makes us really unique is that we actually do what we say we do. We deliver what we promise, and it only gets better with time.
George, can't thank you enough. Very good. A lot of great information here. Like I mentioned before, we have both versions of Island and Island Router Pro in our 7 locations. So make sure you check them out. This video will be on our virtual conference center as well if you want to share with your employees, installers. Sure. But really appreciate your time, George.
Indeed. Thank you, Mark. And let's do another one soon.
Yes, we will. Until next time. Thanks, everybody.